She will not seek re-election. We'll discuss this and more as we dive into today's top stories. I'm Ernie Manous.
I'm Frank Billingsley. We'll also be joined by Harris County Attorney Christian Menefee. He'll discuss deed fraud and what's being done to prevent it here in Harris County.
And I'm Celestia Sherman. Plus, resident acting company member Chris Hutchison joins us to discuss Alley Theater's upcoming production of the Da Vinci Code, which is also his 100th show with the company.
And we want to hear from you. Give us a call or text us at 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. You can also watch us on YouTube by going to hellohouston.org and clicking the big orange banner.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. President Trump is defending FBI Director Kash Patel, who is currently being grilled on Capitol Hill over his handling of the investigation into conservative activist Charlie Kirk's assassination in Utah last week.
Take a look at what he did with respect to this horrible person that he just captured. He did it in 2 days. It took other similar cases 4 days, 5 days, 4 years if you look at certain shooters. Now, I have confidence in everybody in the administration.
But critics are raising concerns about missteps they say the FBI directors made that could harm the prosecution of Kirk's alleged killer. Tyler Robinson is expected to be charged today. The president took reporters' questions as he was about to depart for the United Kingdom. It'll be his second state visit to Britain. King Charles III is expected to deploy tiara diplomacy at a time when the Trump administration's policies on tariffs and security, including over Ukraine's defense against Russia, have tested the UK's own policies. A UN panel of experts is accusing Israeli leaders of inciting genocide in Gaza. Israel has dismissed the report, which comes as it announces that a ground offensive in Gaza City is underway. Here's NPR's Michelle Kellerman.
The head of the Commission of Inquiry, which was set up by the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva, laid out a long list of atrocities in Gaza. And Navi Pillay said the killings, the aid blockages, and forced displacement amount to genocide.
The Commission concluded that Israel has committed genocide against the Palestinian people in Gaza, and that it is continuing with that genocide.
Israel called the report libelous and accused Pillay and the other investigators of being proxies of Hamas. She says she wished the Israelis would cooperate or at least tell the commission where the report was wrong on the facts. Michelle Kellerman, NPR News, the State Department.
One of Hollywood's most celebrated actors, Robert Redford, has died at the age of 89. His decades-long career included unforgettable performances in numerous films. NPR's Netta Ulaby has this remembrance.
Robert Redford was way more than one of the most handsome men in history. Here he is melting Barbra Streisand in the film The Way We Were from 1973.
Can I ask you a personal question?
Sure.
Do you smile all the time?
No. No. No.
As an actor, Redford was more understated than his good looks would suggest. He transformed Hollywood's independent film scene with his Sundance Institute and Festival. And Robert Redford was a producer, director, and ardent environmentalist. Netta Ulaby, NPR News.
From Washington, this is NPR.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Alexandra Hart. Harris County Judge Lina Hidalgo will not seek re-election next year. Hidalgo told ABC 13 she did not want to lead the county for more than 2 terms when she originally took office. She says she's not interested in running for another elected position this cycle, but she's not ruling out running for office again. The announcement comes after months of speculation over whether or not she would pursue re-election. Hidalgo is scheduled to give a press conference today at 2:30. The crowded field of candidates vying to fill an open seat on the Houston City Council offers voters a wide range of options. They have different professional backgrounds, policy priorities, and in some cases, checkered criminal and financial backgrounds. News 88.7's Dominic Anthony Walsh has more on the baggage they carry into the race.
3 candidates have criminal histories. One is the subject of a federal tax lien, and another filed for bankruptcy in June. Only 2 have City Hall experience, former Council Chief of Staff Jordan Thomas and former Council member Dwight Boykins. Boykins was accused of using artificial intelligence to plagiarize his website priorities from another candidate.
Now, everybody uses the AI app, and if she put in the word infrastructure, we put in the word, it pops up. My campaign manager said something that was interesting. How do we know they didn't copy off of us?
While Boykins acknowledges using AI, Alejandra Salinas says her priorities were written by an actual person.
I don't think the city of Houston wants to be represented by an AI bot.
Salinas leads the PAC in fundraising, including nearly $130,000 in out-of-state contributions, mostly from coworkers at her national law firm. I'm Dominic Anthony Walsh, News 88.7.
We spoke with all 15 candidates. You can read more about them at houstonpublicmedia.org. A Texas DPS trooper has been killed in a fiery crash near the East Fork in Montgomery County. KHOU reports that this happened along FM 945. Officials say the trooper was killed while responding to a vehicle that had crashed. Authorities haven't released additional details about what happened or the trooper's identity. I'm Alexandra Hart, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive Insurance, working to help protect small businesses and the owners that run them, offering customizable coverages to salons, accounting firms, tradespeople, and more. Learn more at progressivecommercial.com.
Live from the University of Houston, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's your host for Hello Houston, Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
Hello, Houston.
Thanks for joining us today on Hello Houston.
We were just talking about, what are we going to talk about? And the first thing that popped into my mind is this whole talk about the kissing bugs, which I don't know that much about, but I was saying this is like, hey, you got to keep your doors and windows closed at night, or they're going to like bury little babies in your face. And so I was like, that's not right. And then the show started. There's something to it, though. We'll find out more information. Don't go on what I've said so far. But
when are we going to find out more information about this?
I don't know. I'll look into it. I'll get back to you about it. But the point is, at night, keep your doors and windows closed. We are one of the states where this is happening here. They cause really bad infections. They plant. I've heard both feces, but also they plant their larvae or whatever, their babies in your skin, right under the skin.
Wow.
Ernie, I have
also
no
known
idea
as
what you're talking
vampire bugs.
There you go. See?
Oh, my goodness. Do they go 20 floors high? I'm just curious.
I don't know. We're not going to talk about it anymore because we don't have our full information in place yet.
So we want to thank you for joining us, whether you're tuning in on 88.7 or you are watching us on YouTube. We have a great show coming up. But what is coming up in our weather?
I got to tell you, we took the dogs on a little walk around 8:45 last night, and it was lovely.
Yeah,
I mean, it was a little breezy. The air was dry. We're getting in the upper levels a northwest flow, and that's a dry flow for us. And so that northwest wind translates to drier air. Even though it's sort of humid during the day, it translates to drier air, especially in the mornings and the evenings. So they're not bad. But still, 74 for a low and 94 for a high. Yeah. Tropics are still not quite there. Gabrielle is likely to form today in the Atlantic, but all of the models keep it away from us.
Well, you know, it was interesting because earlier on Houston Matters, Justin Ballard with the Chronicle was talking about kind of that light hurricane season that we've had. Frank, what is your thoughts on that?
The dust has been fairly predominant. The tropical part of the Atlantic, which is where storms form, basically between here and Africa and the Caribbean, that zone has had cooler than normal water. The warmer water's been north of there and over in the Pacific. So, cooler water, African dust, luck of the draw. I mean, we're still going to be on the G storm, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. I mean, 7 in. And September's not over, although I would say we have another month to really watch it, and then we should be okay.
But with all the things you just mentioned, though,
I'm optimistic.
We'll probably be able to glide through this.
I think in the Gulf, our part of the Gulf, I always say October 3rd is about our cutoff. Not that we can't have something after that. We can, obviously, but, especially October 15th, then we're really home free.
Yeah.
But we will keep you all vigilant on that with Frank Billingsley, our chief meteorologist.
What we do know we're going to have, we don't know about a storm, but we do know that Harris County Attorney Christian Menefee will be with us. We also know Texas State Senator Paul Betancourt will be joining us in our next hour. A lot of things going on in the news, and talking of elected officials will lead us right into Celeste's headlines. Here we go.
Harris County Judge Lina Hidalgo announced on Monday in an interview with ABC 13 that she will not seek re-election for a third term. Hidalgo spoke with ABC 13's Melanie Lawson.
So tell me, are you going to run for Harris County Judge again?
Well, look, when I first was elected, I decided I would only do 2 terms. And I have decided to keep that promise and not seek a third term. And so no, I will not be running again.
And why did you make that decision?
The first time I was elected, I said immediately, I don't want to do this for 30 years. I don't want to have more than 2 terms.
Are you planning to run for Congress, as one of the other rumors, for the seat District 29 against Sylvia Garcia?
No, I support Congresswoman Garcia. I'm going to be doing everything I can to support her candidacy.
Hidalgo said she is unsure of what will come next in her career, but she confirmed she will not run for office in this election cycle. She added she plans to stay in public safety and left the door open to return for a new political position in the future. The announcement comes after weeks of controversy and outbursts at Commissioner's Court. To address her announcement, Judge Lina Hidalgo will be holding a press conference today at 2:30 in the lobby of Commissioner's Court. What are your thoughts? Now is the time to chime into Hello Houston on Judge Lina Hidalgo not running again. 713-440-8870. You can call or text.
The judge has been in front of the show, and by friend I mean she has come on the show a few times in this show. She's been on other programs here. She's been open and talked with us. But we couldn't get an answer from her about what her decision was earlier on. She had said at one point that she had made a decision and was going to announce it, but then issues and things had come up in Commissioner's Court and the political landscape, and so she was holding back on it. I'm not surprised that this was the decision she made.
Well, you know politicians better than I do, that's for sure. I've always thought that no answer is an answer.
Mm-hmm.
Depends on who the politician is.
I do.
I guess, but you know, if you're running, you want to get that word out there as soon as you can. And when someone asks, are you up for a third term? If I was going to do it, I would at least say, most likely, if I get the call from voters and our people say I should do it, I'll do it. But, it's a calling.
I hope that this signifies a new generation, a new wave of our elected officials. When we look at Lina Hidalgo, who we heard her say it, I don't want to be in this position for 30 years. And she's looking at being effective. And I think that there's a general consensus of feeling that when we look at who is running right now for the Democratic Party, our former mayor Anise Parker and Houston City Council member Letitia Plummer. On the Republican side, we have Houston Firefighters Union leader Marty Linkton and the mayor of Piney Point Village, Eliza Dutt. So it's one of those things where I think good for Judge Lina Hidalgo for saying, you know what, I didn't want to be in this position for another 30 years. It's time. And she's calling it. And I think we need to see more people call it sometimes.
I think, and purely speculative, and of course what Frank said, I kind of try and read the room of politicians and what's really at play and what they say and how they move. I'm going to slightly disagree with you, Celeste, here, and I'm going to say, and Frank too, that I think she was planning to run again. And I think she thought her childhood bill that she was pushing through Commissioner's Court was going to be this watershed moment where she was going to be the champion of the younger generation of children. And when riding on the wave of that support, she was going to announce her reelection bid. When that kind of blew up in her face and she had all the bad issues and she brought the kids into court and then it kind of was a misstep and then she got a lot of negative press about it, I think at that point she realized she had to reassess and that what was going to be a policy that was going to elevate her actually was a policy that pulled the wind out of her sails. All that being said, I think so she had no choice but to say, I'm stepping away.
I think it's very presumptuous to say she had no choice. I think she was thinking more like, perhaps I'm not going to run again. And you know what? I'm going to push something forward that I'm really passionate about, and I'm going to go for it. And because I'm not running again, I'm going to just put it all out there. And so to me, the way I see it, it's almost like she was in a position where she was like, this is what I'm passionate about. I don't necessarily need to get alignment. I'm not out here politicking, campaigning.
Maybe it'll stick.
Maybe it'll stick. And if it sticks, great. I get to leave on a high note. If not, she's like, this is what I truly believe. I'm walking away.
We have a YouTube comment from Billy. Quote, it's good to move on from Hidalgo and allow new leadership to emerge. Better relationship with city officials. Property crime reduction and flood control still not addressed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The interesting thing, I think, too, is that in today's political environment and the way news is shared and what our elected officials say, I don't know that we'll ever have a full answer on when the decision was made, or at least an answer we can truly hang our hat on. I think we will hear explanation of why it was made and when it was made, but I'm still going to think that had this child bill gone through, this child care bill gone through, and there was a lot of praise and high singing notes, I think she would have stayed in.
Do you think, though, and I really mean this, do you think, though, elected officials, if they decide not to run for another term, owe people an explanation?
No.
I don't think so.
Do you think, let me ask you, either one of you, does she now become a lame duck judge?
Oh, she's definitely a lame duck judge because she's not running again, but what that means for her policies and her ability to work with the commissioner's court. In one way, I think it frees her up because now she can push, like Celeste was saying a minute ago, she can push agenda she believes in and there's no retribution to it. She can push whatever she wants or she feels is the right thing to do. But will she have the support or the lame duck status? The flip side of that is, will people feel like we don't need to rally behind what she wants right now? We need to see what the future is and where we're going next.
Well, and not to mirror her words back at her, but to say, I never intended to run more than 2 terms. Well, you kind of came in this as a lame duck, right? I mean, if she really means that.
See, I don't.
Does she mean that or she doesn't mean it? You don't think she means that?
She may have thought that initially. I think the thing that I notice with politicians, it's very hard to walk away. It takes a lot to walk away. I know.
Don't we know it?
Yeah, the two of us especially. Celeste looks at us and says, "Tell me more."
Miguel says Celeste for judge. You want to run for judge?
Gosh, no. That is one thing. I respect our elected officials, but politics is just
you respect them too much to run for one of those seats.
I respect our voters too much to run for politics. No. I appreciate.
It's interesting.
I appreciate that
because
yes.
if you think back to when Hidalgo got into office, about the focus on her, she was so young, late 20s, was not expected to win the race she was in, won that race, suddenly came in with all this talk on the national scene of, is she the new leadership of the Democratic Party in Texas? Is there a huge, bright future for her? And it seems like at this point now it has cooled considerably around her and she is no longer the flavor of the month. And it'll be interesting to see when she walks away from this position, and she said she's not going to run for any office after 2026 in the immediate future. Does she have a future in politics, or is she going to go into like consulting and behind the scenes and maybe party chair kind of stuff, that kind of work instead?
I'm not exactly sure what, obviously Judge Hidalgo has on her current agenda of what she's going to do from her elected position. But I do not think that her potential to be a leader is gone at all. I think on a national level, she really did and continues to be in many ways a forerunner for being young and being a young Latina woman from Texas who has been vocal about her beliefs and her politics and what she thinks. And so I think that she has, from a local perspective, perhaps she doesn't have all of the wind behind her sails because, she has been in a position. She does have there are some strong candidates coming up the line behind her. But from a, runway of her leadership abilities, I think she's just getting started. And I hope that, regardless of what you think of her from a political standpoint, to see young women, Latinos out there trying to change and move forward, I'm all for it. I think she has a lot of runway for her.
If you have thoughts, give us a call, 713-440-8870.
I want to say one more thing on this before we move away from it, is the fact that, like what you said earlier, Frank, very quickly the tides can change in politics. So one person may seem like they're on the outs today, And in another couple weeks, they could be on the top of the field again. So when you talk, Celeste, too, about what the future holds, maybe the best thing, step away right now. The temperature's a little warm in this kitchen. And maybe she's going to, by stepping away, gives her a chance to reignite and come back.
Who did that playbook? Cher.
Oh, well, if she follows the Cher line, then she's got to have a few more costume changes, though she has been dressing very fancy for Commissioner's Court lately. The judge.
I hope she'll come when this is all said and done.
I hope she'll come tomorrow.
I hope she'll come back to our show and maybe
Talk
give
to
us some insight that she couldn't give us, when she was judge.
Yeah.
So what's really going on there? What are the challenges? What does the next judge need to really watch out for? I mean, she has to have some insight.
And she's got a lot of time left in her term. It's like she's not out in
Like
November.
March,
she's got
right?
another year.
March 3rd, I believe it is. I don't know exactly right. But again, I think
it's the next election. She's in until the end of 26, I believe.
Okay.
In office.
Really?
Yeah.
So sad news.
Oh, yeah. We woke to some sad news this morning.
Yeah, Robert Redford,
The
89.
passing of Robert Redford, beloved Oscar-winning actor and director, has left us.
He was one of the most handsome he was a movie star.
He
when he came out
Yeah.
Barefoot in the Park in the 60s and then went on with The Way We Were and Sundance.
The Sting.
All of it.
Yeah.
It's just, he was a true movie star.
Yeah.
And that it's very hard to become a big movie star these days like that.
And
But-
he stood for something very positive in our culture. He pushed for art and for understanding.
Did he start Sundance?
Yeah, Sundance is his
I think
his
he did.
baby. Yeah.
Really?
And he died in Utah,
Yeah.
in the mountains of Utah.
I did. I had the opportunity to work with him on.
Tell
on
me
an event.
you've got to have a story.
There's a couple stories I have about him, but the one that stands out in my mind is, so before the event, we were going to do a staged interview, and before the event, we were in his green room area backstage, and it was a bunch of people, festival people and all that. And he said, I would like everyone to leave the room, and Ernie, I want you to stay. And everyone's like, what? He's like, oh, and then I'm thinking he wants to go over the questions that we're going to talk about or give me some guidelines of the thing. So everyone left the room. It was him and I alone together. And he said, I just want to get to know you. Tell me about who you are. And he asked me questions about growing up and my child, nothing to do with the interview, but just wanted to build that human connection before we went out and chatted. And just such a nice guy about it. Now, and that's my favorite story. The other funny story about it, I went to school, Loyola University, Chicago, and one of my friends in school said, oh, I've met Robert Redford. This was back when we were in college. And I was like, really? And she's like, yeah, I live next door to the Terms of Endearment house. The Ordinary People House. The Ordinary People House, which he directed the film. And she was homesick from high school one day. And someone came and knocked on the door, and she answered the door, and it was Robert Redford standing there. And he had come to ask if he could move his crane into her family's backyard so he could get that shot of the house in Ordinary People. And she was like, oh, yeah. It's Robert Redford. Cute story. I will always remember that. She, of course, gave him permission. It's Robert Redford at your door.
Yeah.
Frank, you'd have
Cup
given
of
him
sugar.
permission. Yeah.
I'll just tell you this story, since you mentioned Terms of Endearment.
Which has nothing to do with Robert Redford.
back in the early 80s, I actually dated the girl whose family owned the Terms of Endearment house in River Oaks.
There you go.
Yeah, Alexa Scott.
Yeah. Well, cool.
She married a doctor, so good for her.
I
We
will
are
say,
sorry to hear of the passing of
Y'all
Robert
know that
Redford.
I am not obviously a big movie buff. It just
But you
wasn't
know
my
who
thing.
Robert Redford is.
Of course I
Okay,
do.
good.
And
Just wanna
I
make sure.
watched The Way We Were with Barbara Streisand.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember my first real moment of like understanding what romance, like in a movie, like what a romantic movie it was. And he is just a heartthrob. I mean, he was just a total heartthrob. So,
Oh yeah, and just a good guy, and I think we need more of that. He cared about the art.
Never a
He worked-
scandal. I don't know if he was married, children, grandchildren. But
yeah, he was.
Think about that. You know, at one point, there was a time when there weren't scandals.
I know, right? When you were
we
just
had celebrities where
you
they
were
just
loved.
weren't. You were just nice. And
We
you were
just
a
loved
good
you
person.
for doing a good job and being a good actor. It was all it took.
Imagine that. Okay, coming up on Hello Houston. Harris County Attorney Christian Menefee about deed fraud is going to be joining us and what is being done to prevent it right here in Harris County. This is News 88.7. Stay with us.
With federal support gone, Houston Public Media needs a stronger foundation for the future. The Houston Public Media Resiliency Fund is our response to ensure this service remains strong, stable, and community-powered. Your gift today helps us stay on the air tomorrow and the day after that. Give now to the Resiliency Fund at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 800-364-8300.
The internet is full of creative content made by humans. What happens when tech companies use that content to train new artificial intelligence tools without telling the original creators they're using it? And how could these new tools change the internet in the future? How tech companies are using the internet to build AI. That's next time on 1A.
You can hear 1A coming up today at 2 o'clock on News 88.7.
This is Ira Glass. On This American Life, we like stories that surprise you. For instance, imagine finding a new hobby and realizing
to do this hobby right, according to the ways of the masters, there's a pretty good chance that you're going to have to bend the law to get the materials that you need.
If not break it.
Yeah, to break international laws.
real life stories, really good ones, every week.
This American Life, it's on tomorrow night at 9 o'clock.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Houston Grand Opera, opening the 25-26 season with Porgy and Bess, featuring music by George Gershwin, blending jazz, blues, and spirituals. Tickets available now at hgo.org. Support comes from Specs, focusing on whiskey and bourbon this month, with sips of oak, vanilla, and more, featuring known and small batch varieties. More information available at specsonline.com. The fun starts here.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now back to Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
Earlier this month in Harris County, a judge ordered the return of 40 properties that were stolen through a widespread deed fraud scheme. The lawsuit, filed by the Harris County Attorney's Office, accuses a couple, Alba and Harin Martinez, of forging documents to illegally take over homes and sell them to unsuspecting buyers. It's one of the largest cases of its kind in the county. And joining us now to talk about the court's ruling and what's being done to prevent this kind of fraud in the future is Harris County Attorney Christian Menefee. Attorney Menefee, welcome back to Hello Houston. Oh, we don't hear you, but if you have a question or a comment for Attorney Menefee, you can join the conversation at 713-440-8870. Let's try that one more time. Welcome.
Hey, can y'all hear me now?
Yeah,
we sure
there
can.
you are.
Attorney Menefee, the amount of work that goes into this type of fraudulent activity, like forging signatures, fake IDs, forging rubber stamps, forging title deeds, how does the county this size not have a system that at some point can process, that can detect this type of situation?
Because of state law. Prior to this last legislative session, state law did not allow the county to do many things, or many counties across the state to do many things, to take precautionary measures or to have systems in place to detect these types of things. So remember, the county can only do what state law says that it can do, or what's necessarily implied from that. And so fortunately, we've seen a few changes in state law this last session, but frankly, deed fraud has not been a prime target of state lawmakers. And so I'm thankful that they're starting to move in that direction now, and it's freeing up the county to take precautionary measures to try to prevent some of this stuff.
And Chris, to that end, I read your filing. Boy, allegedly, these people were evil. They really took advantage of a lot of people who did not speak English, and maybe some who had never experienced a real estate purchase, didn't know what to look for, didn't understand clear title or how any of that works. These people were very methodical in how they took advantage of some 37 victims, 40 victims.
That's right, around 40 victims. And you're exactly right. They came in and they targeted folks who were non-native English speakers, folks who were in the lower income brackets, folks who had never owned a home before. Many folks were first-generation home buyers or first-generation U.S. citizens, and in some instances, immigrants. I think it's absolutely despicable, and that's why I'm so proud of the fantastic folks at the Harris County Attorney's Office for doing the work, to investigate this, to go after these folks. And I'm glad that we were able to get some people their homes back. But this is an issue that we're seeing more and more across communities in Harris County. So it's imperative that if you see something, you say something, report it to scamfreehc.com so that we can do something about it here at the county attorney's office.
Well, this couple did this for years. I mean, according to your filing, this went back to 2014.
That's right. And we've seen an influx in all types of scams over the past few years. When we were rolling out our Scam Free HC campaign to try to inform people about the types of scams that were happening, I did a press conference on it. And the very next day, I got a call from a scammer who said that my Amazon account had been breached and I needed to send them over some important information so that they could fix the issue. Scammers target the most vulnerable populations in our communities. And oftentimes you hear from residents, they want law enforcement to focus on violent crime, the things that keep people up late at night. That's why we've tried to do everything we can to tool our office to start to fight against some of these crimes that are not physical and violent crimes, but still have a devastating impact on people across our communities.
Attorney Menefee, help me understand, as you understand it, how did they do this? Because first of all, as Frank said, it just feels evil, but so methodical. What was the process that they had to go through, and how clever or just opportunistic were they?
They were highly opportunistic. The first thing you have to do is be in a position to convince your neighbors that you are a good business person who is trying to look out in their best interests, and that you have properties that you're going to sell to them because you want to help them do better in life. The main issue here was forging deeds and forging other documents that would show home ownership. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, state law doesn't provide any type of process that allows local governments to have a fail-safe to go in and investigate when a deed is filed. Under the current processes that have been in place for hundreds of years in this state, there's no ability for a county clerk's office or any other local government official to go in and say, you know what, this signature looks fake. This notary, we need to verify that this notary exists, that they're on the books, and that they're authorized to do business as a notary in the state of Texas. So what this couple did was target those vulnerable communities that we talked about earlier, and they would sell them properties that they acquired through a forged deed, or that they acquired through a falsely notarized document conveying a property interest in some other way. These folks would be none the wiser, and they would pay $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, and sometimes even more for these homes. They would pay it in cash. There would be no title work done, so they wouldn't find out that they didn't actually own the home until they would have some sort of conflict with either law enforcement or with the true owners of the house. It is truly a despicable crime, and that's why we were proud to step in here and work hard to get these folks their homes back.
To your point, Billy from YouTube says, is title insurance mandatory in Texas? I don't think for a cash deal it is, but correct me.
Not to my knowledge. And remember, the important linchpin of this scam is you're targeting people who traditionally would not have access to standard forms of home ownership, right? So these are not folks who are going out to get a mortgage, who are looking to go through the entire process. These are folks who just want their fair chance at the American dream, and they have the opportunity, and somebody tells them, hey, here's this house that we're going to be able to sell you for $40,000 if you're able to come together with the cash. They raid their life savings, any checking accounts, saving accounts that they may have, and they put up the money to get it, only to find out that they're being scammed. And so there was definitely an information gap here, and that's what makes this such a horrible and despicable crime, is that there are folks who are familiar with the process who are taking advantage of their neighbors who are not.
Are there any safeguards for the victims once they find out, okay, my deed has been stolen? What is the process from their end? And I would imagine that it's an expensive one.
The process is typically for them to go file their own lawsuit and to have a court declare that they are the rightful owners of the property, and then to take steps to get whoever's in the property out of the property. But you're exactly right. That is going to be a very expensive process. I mean, these folks who are buying homes with cash, with their life savings, who are not familiar with the home buying process, they're also not going to be familiar with the legal process. And so that's why we, in what I would say a very innovative way, tooled up the county attorney's office to try to take on some of these cases. You can look across the state of Texas and you're not going to see a county attorney's office bringing these types of lawsuits. Our lawyers got very creative to find a way to use government resources to help these communities that need the help. But I've been very clear, and we've worked hard to lobby folks in the state legislature, that they need to pass laws that provide for notification systems that immediately notify you if there has been some sort of document filed that impacts your ownership, that requires certain fail-safes whenever a deed is filed or a document is notarized that has to do with property records, to be able to confirm that the signature is the true and correct signature of the person who signed it. All of that will take money that has to be unlocked by the state government to help local government be able to protect its residents.
So for people listening, to help walk them through what exactly happened here, are the couple that are accused of doing this, did they take possession of these homes and then legally now owned the homes that they then sold? Or had they taken the right of possession without actually owning the homes and then selling them to someone else who now believes that they have purchased the home, but actually they have not purchased the home?
The latter. So what they did in these instances was, in many instances, if a home was deeded to someone or if a home was inherited by someone, they would go to the clerk's office, file a forged deed, warranty deed, some other type of deed, saying that they are now the owner of the home. In many instances, these homes would not have anyone inhabiting them, right? And so once they get the legal authorization to say this is my house because they have filed a forged deed with the clerk's office, they would then go sell the house in cash to some unsuspecting buyer who would purchase the home, then have the legal right to inhabit the home, and then they would go to the home, live in the home, only to find out because some relative or somebody else comes at a later date and says, no, this is our house. We never sold this house to the person that you said you bought it from. So how could you be the legal resident of this home? So we saw this in dozens of examples, and that to us raises to the level where the county attorney's office needs to stand up and do something about it. And so what we did was get a court order where the judge ruled that all of these folks were the legal owners of the homes. And these were the people who originally owned the homes. And then we got a $1.2 million judgment to try to offset some of the fraud that was perpetrated against the unsuspecting buyers. But I want to be clear, this is not an efficient way to solve these problems. You have to have precautionary measures in place, because what you do not want is to try to fix a fraud after the fraud happens. The best way to make sure that people keep their money in their bank account and they're never tied up in this type of thing is to prevent it at the outset. And that's why I've been pushing for changes in state law so that measures can be in place so that nobody will be scammed in this way in our communities.
So with the settlement, if you get the settlement, do the properties revert back to the original owners and money go to the folks that thought they owned the house? Is there an opportunity for the folks who believe they own the houses now to use that money toward purchasing the house from the original owners of the house? How does it play? How do we make all the victims whole in this?
I want to be clear, this lawsuit is not going to make all the victims whole. And that's because state law limits the amount of money that a local government can get on behalf of a private citizen. So a lot of these folks, and we've encouraged them, are going to need to go file their own lawsuits. But what this judgment does is it makes clear that these properties are owned by the original owners, right? The folks whose signatures were forward on deeds or whatever it may be, to say that they no longer own the homes. That $1.2 million will be a pool of money from which unsuspecting buyers can come to the county and try to get access to some of that money to offset the losses that they experience in this fraud. But we're not expecting that this is going to make folks whole one-to-one. And that's the problem with a fraud like this. And I'll be honest, when you make an innovative approach like this and you try a new way of helping out constituents, there are some folks who are going to say, if you're not going to get 100% of my money back, just get out the way. But nothing about our lawsuit prohibits, blocks, or undermines the victims here from filing their own lawsuits. So they're able to go and file their own lawsuits and target the people who targeted them in their communities as well.
So the lawsuits that you brought are criminal lawsuits, and would the individuals that were victimized have to file civil lawsuits? Is that how that's going to work?
No, we have filed a civil lawsuit, but that lawsuit is on behalf of the state of Texas, Harris County, because of the fraud that occurred.
So it's all
the
civil.
The individuals can go and file their own civil lawsuits as well, so that they can get potentially money and be made whole. We have also referred the entire file of everything that we uncovered and we found. We sent that to the district attorney's office so that they can evaluate and determine whether they want to bring criminal charges against this pair of fraudsters as well.
Attorney Menefee, can you tell us how the couple accused of this scam ended up being linked to so many different victims? What was that process like?
Honestly, it was like unraveling a very, very horrible story that had impacted so many folks. We originally found out about some of this from local reporting, and then people that were adjacent to county employees would come tell the county, hey, this thing happened to me. The next thing you know, we're dealing with more than 40 or so victims who either saw it on the news and said, hey, something similar happened to me. That's what's so dangerous about these schemes, is that so many people suffer in silence. And if you don't have government doing everything it can to come up with creative ways to solve those problems, then many of these folks are just going to get scammed and try their best to move on with life. So there was no kind of clear linkage between all these folks, but we have some great investigators in the county attorney's office, some great lawyers in the county attorney's office. Between that and local media doing its job, we were able to piece everything together to figure out just how big of a scheme this was.
That you may be the wrong person to ask this question of, but do the accused have a defense of any sort that you have heard or see?
You're correct. I am the wrong person to ask this. I have spent a lot of time looking at the files. My team has spent a lot of time talking to the victims. And I will tell you, if there is some excuse out there, I can't imagine it. And I've been the county attorney for the past 4 years. We've seen a lot of stuff, but this is egregious. And I would be shocked if there was any good faith explanation. In fact, if there was, then you would have expected the folks accused here to go and to plead their case in court, but they didn't do that. So my guess is they know exactly how in the wrong they are. And I'm hopeful that eventually this will rise to a criminal level as well.
Also in the lawsuit, it appeared that a notary had broken the law and falsely notarized some of this, and you're bringing suit against them as well?
That's right. We're seeing all across our county, these scams are multifaceted. Sometimes they involve multiple people who are willing to undermine integrity and to act in a way that is shameful. And so sometimes it's the main perpetrator, but other times there are people who are adjacent to it who are helping out. We've seen folks forge notary signatures, right? But we've also seen notaries who have at times worked outside the confines of their authorization under the state of Texas. So look, if you're anywhere near any one of these schemes and we find out about it, we will put the resources of the county attorney's office to hold you accountable. And so I'm, very proud of the lawyers here. Many more that are out there that are across the county that we have to focus on. There was a story about a retired teacher who had spent her life savings on her home, only to have it taken away from her. We filed suit in that case, and the best we were able to get was $100,000 to that victim. Now, that's $100,000 more than zero, but to her, she still lost a home that she had invested so much in. So that's why it's incredibly important that we focus on prevention and not trying to solve the issue after it occurs.
If Attorney Menefee, if somebody is listening or watching us on YouTube right now and is thinking, oh my gosh, I think this has happened to me, where is the first step that they should go, or what's the process of that? Should they reach out to your office? What is that process like?
Go to scamfreehc.com. If you think that you've been a victim, if you may have been a victim, if you have questions, go to scamfreehc.com. We have just a set of talented lawyers, investigators, employees in this office who will happily take a look at what you send over and evaluate and help navigate the situation. So my advice to folks is go to scamfreehc.com. Every level of government should be working together to address these types of thefts, these scams, these fraudulent practices. And so we're very proud that it's happening at the county. And what I'm going to continue to do is keep calling on the state of Texas to pass laws that not only inform people so that they can prevent stuff themselves, but also real measures in place that help prevent this stuff.
We know that certain scams are done repeatedly over and over again. I think of a crown prince somewhere who just needs enough money to help get his country out of the hock from me. But my question is this a common scam? Are there other perpetrators of a similar scam, or is this one unique in the online or in-person scamming world that's happening today?
If you would have asked me a couple of years ago, I probably would have told you that this was a rare thing that doesn't happen often. But my worry is that there are so many victims out there who just haven't come forward. Once we launched scamfreehc.com, once we brought one of these cases, once you started to see more reporting about these cases, you start to hear about it a whole lot more. So we've gotten complaints that have come to the office. When I am out and about around the county, I will tell you this is the thing that people come talk to me the most about. Now that they've seen it on the news, they'll either say, good job in helping those folks get their house back, or I have a friend who went through something similar. So my fear is that this may be far more common than we originally thought. There was a bill in the regular session. There's been a bill in the special session as well to try to add a few precautionary measures to give the county clerk's office the ability to say something isn't right here. We're going to pause this process. We're not going to record this deed. We're going to pause it, and we're going to pass it off to the county attorney's office or the DA's office. So that is one bill that passed. So I'm grateful for that. I think that there are more measures that are needed, but I think it's one of those things where, the vast majority of the iceberg is underwater, and we're just kind of seeing the tip.
All right, turning things just a little bit, as you probably heard, Judge Hidalgo has said she will not run for a third term. What's your thought on that?
I thought a lot about Judge Hidalgo's announcement after she made it last night. And it dawned on me for the first time in a long time that Judge Hidalgo and I met back in 2017, which means that it's been around 7-8 years at this point. I think Judge Hidalgo, her heart has always been in the right place. She has maintained a level of integrity that I just think is so honest and pure in this business. She has shepherded the county through a number of disasters, including a global pandemic, and she did so with thoughtfulness, with grace. And I'm just excited to hear what's next for her. I know that this was not a decision that she made easily, but I've been so grateful to watch her in service, to serve alongside her, and I'm very excited to see what's next for her.
And we also did receive an email from Hi in Montrose who says, tell the listeners, Celeste, to check on their deed records frequently at the Harris County website. So we want to take a moment really quickly to thank you, Attorney Menefee, for joining us today on Hello Houston.
Thank y'all for having me.
Coming up, we'll discuss the Da Vinci Code play at the Alley Theater. Stay with us as Hello Houston continues.
Federal funding for public media has been cut. In response, we're creating Houston Public Media's Resiliency Fund. Donations made toward the fund will directly counter the loss of the $2.2 million in federal funds that were cut annually and strengthen our station's foundation to provide our services into the future. Contributing to this fund is easy and quick and makes all the difference to our station. Help build the Resiliency Fund now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate.
Your understanding of our changing world. The TED Radio Hour, Tuesdays at 9 p.m. on News 88.7.
You can't tackle life's big challenges if you let the little ones get you down. That's why Houston Matters devotes the first Monday of each month to a sort of group moan session we call Houstonian Pet Peeves. It's a communal, cathartic experience, but not everyone can join us live at 9 a.m., and not every peeve occurs to you right then and there. That's okay. We welcome your gripes about life in Houston anytime at talk@houstonmatters.org.
Support comes from Asia Society Texas, presenting a discussion led by Orville Schell, focusing on the big three of global leaders, Xi Jinping, Vladimir Putin, and Donald Trump, September 25th. Tickets at asiasociety.org/Texas.
Support comes from Pearland, Texas, offering new construction with custom options and amenities, mature neighborhoods filled with trees, and urban living. Details at pearlandedc.com/inspiration. Pearland, inspiration lives here.
Tonight on Houston Public Media TV8, American Experience looks at the presidency of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. From his response to the Great Depression to leading the country through World War II. Tonight at 7 on TV8.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Holocaust Museum Houston, featuring Growing Up Jewish, exploring Jewish identity through contemporary art. Viewing begins at the opening reception on September 18th. Details at hmh.org.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now back to Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
Wow, who did not love Dan Brown's Da Vinci Code when it first came out? What a remarkable book. An eventual movie with Tom Hanks, and even a play now running from September 19th to October 19th, based on, of course, the novel. It's at the Alley Theater. And like its novel counterpart, follows symbologist Robert Langdon and cryptologist Sophie Deveau as they embark on an adventure to solve a puzzle that could change history.
Dun, dun, dun.
Or at least make you wonder about the Bible that you read.
What's going on? What are they pointing at?
I mean, additionally, this play marks resident acting company member Chris Hutchison's 100th show at the Alley Theater after more than 20 years with the company. Chris joins us now. He plays Silas in the Da Vinci Code. If you don't remember Silas, he's that fanatical albino monk who was into self-flagellation, as I recall. He joins us now to tell us more about the play and his own career. Chris, welcome to Hello Houston.
Hi. Thanks for having me, everyone.
Chris, I can't believe it's been 20 years. I remember when you joined the company, and I thought you're one of the more recent ones to join, and now it's been 20-some years? My Lord.
Isn't that the way it goes? I feel the same way. I'm hearing all these things. It's great to be celebrating this, but it feels crazy because none of us really feels as old as we are.
Accurate, Chris.
So tell us about this play, because I mean, the book was wonderful. The movie, almost wonderful, but it's hard to make a movie out of an amazing novel. So how does the play stack up to this?
Well, I think it stacks up wonderfully. I think, it's a whole different kind of challenge to, bringing the page to life on two-dimensional media on screen is one thing, but three-dimensional media where you're watching live actors do all this stuff and sharing it with your fellow audience members, I think is sort of gives it a whole new wrinkle. And it also gives us the opportunity to wow you with amazing set design, amazing lights and projections and beautiful costumes. So you get all of that good stuff and you get it happening right there in front of you, sharing it with 700 other people and with a bunch of us up there on stage. And it pops. It's a really going to be a fun experience for people.
Now, Chris, did you feel or do you feel that added pressure given the Da Vinci Code was so popular? It has been a book and it's a complex story. Did you feel that pressure?
Yeah, I think it's the good kind of pressure, though. It's the same as if you're doing Shakespeare, if you're doing Hamlet, there have been, 500 amazing actors who've played that role over time. And it's the same thing here. It's the kind of challenge that we look forward to. How can we come to this with fresh eyes, and how can we interpret it in a way that it'll be fresh for our audience? And I think we're accomplishing that pretty well, and it's exactly the kind of challenge that we look forward to in the theater, I think.
You talk about how to approach it, and I think back, as Frank mentioned, when Da Vinci Code came out, if people don't remember just what a groundshed moment that was and how many copies that book sold and what a juggernaut it was in pop culture. So now it's been a few years since that happened, and I'm curious, do you think it carries the same punch as it did with the surprise initially of all of it? Or have you had to work to bring it up to today's standards of understanding of storytelling? Now, what they did that was unique, or Dan Brown did that was unique in that book, now has become commonplace in a lot of storytelling, and we've seen a lot of imitations of it. How does this come in as real and fresh and something of today?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think, if a story's good, it will, sort of transcend all of that. But I think also we get what we've learned at the Alley over the years is because, in the summer we do, oftentimes an Agatha Christie story, a murder mystery or something, which has been around for 50 or 100 years, one of the most popular writers in the English language. And, I think two things happen. As time passes, people don't remember all the ins and outs of the story. So we sort of can enjoy that possibility that people will say, oh, that's right. That's what happens now. That's what happens now. But that they come into the theater wanting to have a fun experience and a good time. So, people aren't going to try so hard to remember exactly what it was that happened, but to let that story unfold again and that recognition kind of grow. And I think that's one of the things we'll benefit from. This thing was huge, but that was 20 years ago, and lots of other big cultural touchstones have come and gone since then. So people might recognize the title, they might recognize, the idea of a crazy monk, murderous monk coming after people. But I think how all the pieces fit together and what the ultimate sort of mystery is, I think people will be able to kind of enjoy the ride as we all get there together again.
How much are you like that monk?
Well, any actor's going to say that you have to have something in common with all of your characters.
You have scar marks all over you have scar marks all over your back from your late night.
Yeah, right. I haven't done a lot of, there's the famous story about Dustin Hoffman doing The Marathon Man with Laurence Olivier, and there's a torture scene where Olivier's like drilling his teeth, and torturing him that way. And Dustin Hoffman came in and said, I had my friend drill my teeth without anesthesia. And Laurence Olivier said, you should just try acting.
Right.
So,
method acting only goes so far, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, it's fun. We have the wardrobe department and props department and sort of Harris come up with amazing solutions for the blood and all of this. So the audience is really, it feels very visceral. Some of the his self-harm that's sort of happening.
So 100 shows for you. That's amazing. I mean, Ernie laughs about age, but that's a real accomplishment. Does one stand out as your absolute favorite?
There's several that are favorites, but there's one I know Ernie will remember. It was called The Lieutenant of Inishmore by Martin McDonagh, an Irish playwright. Yeah. And it was like a play that just not a lot of theaters would have been able to do, just because of the nature of it and what it required. And it was also kind of an anarchic and bloody kind of play, but it's really darkly funny. There's a live cat on stage that has to sort of act, and we had this amazing cat in it. And that one it's so rare that something like that comes along and you get to do it and do it well. And that one will always be sort of my favorite.
And a favorite actor or actress you've worked with?
Oh, I can guess which one's his favorite actress he's worked with, but I'll let him answer.
Yeah, there's really only one answer to that question. If I want to go home tonight.
Yeah.
Is that your wife by chance?
Yeah, Elizabeth Punch, who's also in the company, who celebrated her 100th performance in The Mirror Cracked, which just closed a few weeks ago. She's amazing. Yes, there's other great actresses I've worked with, but Elizabeth is amazing. What she's accomplished here is extraordinary. I don't think there are many actresses on the American stage in general who've gotten to play the kinds of parts she's gotten to play. And because she's who she is and because she's always working hard and getting better and better, she's done amazing performances and work on some amazing iconic roles. And
technology has really changed television. It's changed radio. It's changed newspapers. It's changed everything but theater. Theater is still theater.
Absolutely. And I think we're depending on that as the world goes the way of AI. And there's a lot of technology that's found its way into theater, and you'll see a lot of it in the Da Vinci Code. But I think we all feel it's very important to figure out how to use that to aid the fundamental human element and connection that is what theater is all about.
Yeah. Wow. Well, congratulations.
Congratulations.
Chris, good to see you again.
Chris Hutchison is a resident acting company member playing Silas in the Alley Theater's production of the Da Vinci Code. Chris, again, thanks for joining us today on Hello Houston, and congratulations.
Thanks so much. It was nice to see you all. Thanks for having me.
The Da Vinci Code will be on stage at Alley Theater from September 19th through October 19th of this year. Coming up, we'll continue diving into today's top stories. Stay with us for the second hour of Hello Houston.
Stay tuned. There's more Hello Houston on the way with Ernie Manous, Celestia Sherman, and Frank Billingsley. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at HoustonPublicMedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own. and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.
Support comes from Miller Outdoor Theater, featuring modern jazz masters performing music from the Nancy Wilson Cannonball Adderley Capitol Catalog. This Saturday, open to the public. More at MillerOutdoorTheater.com.
We have a slight chance of a thunderstorm for the afternoon. Currently it's 89, and this is your NPR station, KUHF, Houston. News 88.7, a service of the University of Houston. It's 12 o'clock.
Just ahead on this hour of Hello Houston, State Senator Paul Bettencourt joins us to discuss a new committee to study the political temperature on college campuses following the assassination of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. I'm Frank Billingsley.
And I'm Celestia Sherman. We'll also talk with John Sullivan, the former U.S. ambassador to Russia, who will tell us about his experience in Moscow and the future of international relations.
And I'm Ernie Manous. Plus, we'll also hear from actress Ann Morrison, who plays Kimberly in the national tour of the Tony Award-winning musical Kimberly Akimbo.
And we want to hear from you. Give us a call or send us a text at 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. You can also watch us on YouTube by going to houstonpublicmedia.org and clicking the big orange banner.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. 2 weeks before a possible government shutdown, House Republicans are unveiling legislation to fund the government through November 21st and add security resources for government officials. It's unclear they have the votes to pass it. The stopgap bill extends current funding levels for federal agencies for 7 weeks and adds $58 million to boost security for the federal judiciary and for executive branch officials following a request from the White House. Republican leaders in the House added another $30 million to increase resources that lawmakers can use for their own security. House Speaker Mike Johnson told reporters today the bill allows more time to come to agreement on year-long spending bills. Democrats have pressed Republicans for bipartisan talks on a short-term bill and are demanding that any spending extension should address health care subsidies that are due to expire at the end of the year. Some Democrats are also demanding that a bill roll back the changes to the Medicaid program that were part of the GOP tax bill that was signed into law in July. The man suspected of fatally shooting conservative activist Charlie Kirk will be formally charged today at a court hearing in Utah. NPR's Tovia Smith says 22-year-old Tyler Robinson is expected to face multiple counts, including aggravated murder, which carries a potential death sentence under state law.
Authorities say they have, quote, mountains of evidence, including DNA at the scene of the shooting, and they say Robinson wrote a note ahead of the attack sharing his intention, as FBI Director Kash Patel told Fox News.
He claimed that he had an opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk, and he was going to do it because of his hatred for what Charlie stood for.
Patel did not say who may have received that note or whether they may have tried to intervene. Robinson will make his first appearance in court virtually from his jail cell, where he's been held without bail. Tovia Smith, NPR News, St. George, Utah.
At an anti-hate summit in Pittsburgh today, Pennsylvania's Democratic Governor Josh Shapiro urged elected officials to condemn all violence, regardless of party affiliation.
In America, that this work doesn't just fall to others, it falls to each and every one of us.
The governor was the target of political violence earlier this year when his residence was set on fire while his family was home. The Federal Reserve's policymakers are meeting for the next 2 days. Investors are watching to see if the Fed reduces interest rates by as much as President Trump wants. The central bank will announce its decision tomorrow afternoon. From Washington, this is NPR News.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Alexandra Hart. Defense lawyers for Gonzalo Leon Jr., the man accused of shooting and killing 11-year-old Julian Guzman during a ding-dong ditch prank last month, are asking the court for information about an arrest made at the scene the night of the murder. In documents shared with Houston public media but not yet officially filed with the court, Leon's lawyer, John Paulo Masarola, is requesting the case file for an arrest of, quote, an older cousin on scene with a stolen pistol. Court records show an arrest was made at the scene and at the time of the shooting of a 19-year-old for unlawful carry. Houston Police Department says the arrest is unrelated and they have no evidence the man arrested is related to Guzman. Fort Bend residents will have the chance this weekend to give their thoughts on proposed new voter maps. The Citizens Redistricting Committee voted last night to advance 5 maps. Wendy Davis and Ryan Yokubaitis designed the map that had the most votes. The two were appointed to the Redistricting Committee by Republican Commissioner Vincent Morales. They say they wanted to draw a map that would have the support of all members of Commissioner's Court, who will have the final say.
Something that we wanted to see was that there was a map that could be potentially agreed upon by all members of the court.
The committee plans to hold public hearings on Saturday and Sunday to get feedback on the maps. We are now in the back half of hurricane season, and so far there have been no threats to the region this year. Justin Ballard is a meteorologist with the Houston Chronicle. He says that after this month, the chances of a major storm hitting us reduce significantly.
185 tropical storm and hurricane landfalls since 1851 along the Texas Gulf Coast. 175 of those have all been June, July, August, September. Once we get to October, we start seeing cold fronts move in, and that really helps keep those hurricanes, tropical storms, whatever it may be, at bay.
There is a system out in the Atlantic right now, but that is not projected to make landfall in the United States. Ballard also says another tropical wave off the coast of Africa has formed. However, that has a low chance of development. I'm Alexandra Hart, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. As a fiduciary, Fisher Investments is obligated to act in their client's best interest. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss. This is NPR.
Live from Houston Public Media and News 88.7, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now, Hello Houston with Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
Thanks for joining us this second hour of Hello Houston.
Quiet radar. I don't
Yeah.
see much happening out there, so I would look for a sunny day.
Nice.
Just my 2 cents on weather.
A sunny September 16th day.
You got in the date.
2025, right here in Houston, Texas.
You know what? You can watch us live on YouTube. We haven't mentioned that today.
Yes, we did.
They're watching us. I've been talking to them.
I'm mentioning it again. But you can watch us. Go to YouTube. Look for the Houston Public Media channel and join in. That's where there's a lot of conversation happens on the show. Kind of a secondary show goes on there. And there's a group there, and they seem to know each other and share with each other. And we love seeing their comments and what they have to say. If you'd like to do it, just go there. Ring the bell, subscribe, and like us. We like that.
You know, we also got a text. I want to know what you think about this text.
Okay.
About Hidalgo. A comment regarding Judge Hidalgo and her future political stamp. I disagree with what you guys had to say about her ability and status. I think, sadly, unfortunately, the fact that she admitted she had depression and took time off to get it treated absolutely ruined any chance she will ever have on the national stage. I don't think she will ever be trusted because of that. That's a sad commentary on the world we live in, but I'm afraid I think that's the fact.
Before we address what you actually brought up there, I don't think we questioned her ability or her. We talked about what we thought her political future would be, but I don't think we brought up any of those, the issues of her.
No, I think Chris Menefee brought up the fact that she did well during the pandemic. Remember her big test wasn't it the chemical explosion we had? Well, that was one of the big in the fire, and I thought she did really well during that. My point is, can someone not admit they have depression and it not ruin their life or their career? I mean, that's a sad commentary on us, not
Yeah.
on her.
Right. I mean,
I
I don't
admire
know.
her. But I have family members that have gone through depression.
Right. I don't know that I've heard much conversation in the public square in this announcement right now regarding back to that time. Yes, she took time off as medical leave is for any other condition and came back in.
And there's so many forms of depression.
Mm-hmm.
The depression can just be, I'm having a tough time dealing with postpartum depression. You never know what that means.
Right.
So I think that a public official that is honest about their physical and mental state could certainly not be held against them.
I will go back. Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
The interpretation that I think when I read the text from about the comment is that she's saying that basically there's still a lot of stigma around mental health in today's day and age, and people are still very critical of public figures that come out and say that they struggle with mental health.
Yep. I agree with that too. That was basically what I was going to say too. Today I've noticed a lot. You and I are like almost saying the exact same thing at the exact same moment. So I just
sometimes we're on it.
We're in sync. Sometimes you feel like a nut. Sometimes you don't.
This is funny. So Robert Redford wanted the lead role in The Graduate, which called for a boy awkward with girls, not particularly good looking. Director Mike Nichols asked Redford, "When's the last time a girl turned you down?" Redford said, "What do you mean?" Nichols chose Dustin Hoffman, of course. That's from Gary in Cyprus.
Yeah.
Too true.
Too true. Anyway, we do have more news to get into today, and so let's look back into the headlines. What's going on, Celeste?
Speaker of the House Dustin Burrows, a Republican from Lubbock, and Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick created committees to study the heightened political temperature and situations on campuses following the assassination of conservative activist and podcaster Charlie Kirk. 7 senators and 8 House members will study university climate in the months ahead. So far, they plan to focus on protecting speech from undue administrative censorship and increasing security for social gatherings on campuses, according to a press release from Representative Terry Wilson, a Republican out of Georgetown, the chair of the Texas House Committee. Chair of the committee in the Senate, Senator Paul Betancourt, a Republican from Houston, says another look at social media law is on the table as well. This new committee was formed shortly after Texas Education Agency Commissioner Mike Morath sent a letter to schools across Texas promising swift action against educators who post inappropriate comments on social media about the killing of Charlie Kirk. Several school districts and universities have reported firing employees afterward. What are your thoughts on this committee? Now is the time to join the conversation on Hello Houston at 713-440-8870.
I told you yesterday, I thought that the social media problems that we're having were going to have to be fixed with laws. Because otherwise, and I don't really know how you do that, but policing it is not going to work if it's self-policed. It's just not.
And the question then becomes, when we're looking at free speech and Second Amendment and social media and posting, how it all works together and different people within different industries, how they're held to certain different levels of accountability and what they can say and who gets to decide what is appropriate, what is inappropriate based on those different industries. It's a very complex situation, and we are entering new times. I mean, this has been coming for a while, but now we are in a place where people are losing their jobs over things that they're saying.
I question that. Ernie was saying yesterday, we have a freedom of speech in this country. And if you are not representing your employers, should you have the right to say whatever you want to say? Or are you always representing your employer in some way?
Well, it's interesting because what if you're a small business owner and you own small businesses within a community and you're well-vered and you put your political beliefs out there and people might there might be a backlash to that.
That's happened in the city.
That's happened. We've seen it in different times.
Sure. Yeah. And, you take a stance on whatever it is, and you say, I'm not going to bake a cake for these people, or I'm not going to invite these people into my restaurant for whatever reason. Then, yes, it gets out there, and you may have that right. But business owners are a little different. You're taking a chance when you take a political stance.
Right.
When I question if educators have to be held to the same standard? Do they have to represent their school, no matter what school, elementary, high school, college? If it's a state school, does the state or anyone else have a right to say, you crossed the line with some of your comments, so you're fired?
And I also have to be very honest in that sometimes I don't want to know. I know that there are certain relationships, for example, my daughter's teachers, I want to be able to look at them in a space where I don't know necessarily everything that they think and want to believe in and support. You know, there's also that can of worms from almost like a consumer standpoint where some things, it's like back then, there used to be this level of courtesy where you didn't say who you voted for.
Right.
You didn't ask certain things.
There used to be a curtain.
There
You'd
used
go
to be
into
a
the
curtain,
booth,
and you used to close it
pull the
off.
curtain.
And there used to be this common courtesy amongst citizens that said, we don't need to be knowing all of those types of things.
Well, we're in an era now of identity politics.
Yes.
And let me give you an example, and I think people will understand this if I give you this example. If you are an American and you go to France, and you start talking to a Frenchman, and that Frenchman says, you know, we look at America, we see what you're doing over there. You haven't helped the poverty rate. You haven't helped the homeless rate. Your taxes are ridiculous. They're all billionaires trying to get the money, on and on and on. Mm-hmm. You'd still say, well, you know what? Still the best country to live in. Everybody still wants to be here. America is still the best. And this is what happens with Republicans and Democrats and independents. You can sit and say all the bad things you want about the Republican Party or the Democratic Party or the Independent Party. And if that person identifies as a Republican or a Democrat, they'll still say, well, you know what? Kamala would have been the best thing for this country. Or you know what? Trump is still the best thing for this country. Well, everything you're saying might be right. Everything. But you know what? I identify as a Republican or Democrat or independent. It's the same way. You can say all the wonderful things you want about God, but if a person identifies as an atheist, they may believe that they aren't going to fall for that. So they're going to stay with their identity. So they don't think it through. And that's where we are. We have identity politics. And no matter what comes your way, if you identify a certain way, you're going to defend it to the end.
713-440-8870. We want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on this and where we are currently in this country? 713-440-8870.
Yes, and we're going to staying in the realm of. I got to turn myself back on. Staying in the realm of all of this. Now, a story about someone who lost their job for honoring late conservative activist Charlie Kirk. Benny Ray Harmony, a popular local news anchor at WICS ABC 20 in Springfield, Illinois, resigned after being suspended for delivering a tribute to the late conservative activist Charlie Kirk during a live newscast.
When conversations stop happening, when individuals become wordless, that's when violence begins. So, if you do one thing today, make it be with passion, with conviction. Stand up for your friends, stand up for your beliefs, and speak loudly, even if your voice shakes.
Following the tribute, the channel suspended Harmony, a decision that led her to announce her immediate resignation on social media. In her statement on X, formerly Twitter, she said, quote, "Many in the mainstream media have been fired or punished for mocking his assassination. I believe I'm the first to be targeted for honoring him on air," end quote. She emphasized that her resignation was rooted in her refusal to compromise on essential personal values of faith and love of country to retain her job. What are your thoughts on her on-air comments? Heartfelt or unprofessional? Call us at 713-440-8870. I just want to say I think we're having a little trouble with our phone lines there. Folks are trying to get through right now. So text us or also comment in the YouTube channel.
Or you can also send us an email, talk@hellohouston.org. We are trying to get our phone lines up and running. I think we are having some issues. Yeah. It's interesting looking at this anchor that was on, in commercial television. I have questions, and not necessarily, I have questions because just not from the content perspective of what she was saying, just from a work perspective. Did she go rogue? Did she run this by, we have processes in our work industry where we have meetings, where we discuss what we're going to be talking about. Did she run this by somebody before going out and kind of, or did she go rogue? That's when you're in news, you can't just have a moment and take over something if you haven't run it by your team.
There's a line in the film Sunset Boulevard where they say something to the effect of, people forget there are writers. They think the actors just open up their mouths and make up their dialogue. And the point is, when you are representing an organization, be it Houston Public Media or ABC News or Channel 2, there is a group of people that craft the show you are doing. Now, we as commentators on this show, after we launch into topics, share our opinions and thoughts that aren't written out, but we know what we're talking about. We know what's been decided upon ahead of time. When you take a personal stance, like you say, was this something decided? Was it something that the news director was aware of, or the producer of the cast?
Her executive producer. Yeah. We have chains of command almost that are looking at this. We have multiple eyes that look at what we're going to be talking about
on the public square. That's media. What is different is if you take to your own personal, if you are talking among your own group as yourself, as opposed to the person who is paying you as an entity, as a spokesperson for that organization, I think there are different rules that apply.
Especially television news. You don't
yes.
get out
what,
there.
What do you know about that, Frank?
I think she absolutely went a little rogue. And if you're going to go rogue, don't go rogue on such a hot topic. It's just...
Well, I think some people would think that this is exactly the type of topic that you go rogue for.
Because then you'll be noticed.
Denise mentions in the YouTube chat, she says, were the reporter's comments announced as an editorial piece? And that's another piece of the puzzle. How was it couched? What were we expecting as an organization for this person to say?
We did receive a text that says heartfelt and unprofessional.
Well, Jen in Clear Lake says certain jobs have always had restrictions on what people say, including teachers. However, now it's not just an employer making rules for employees. We have elected politicians shutting down the free speech of citizens. That seems like an amendment violation.
Mm-hmm. And for the record, she did not lose her job. She after being suspended, she resigned.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, which I think perhaps maybe she knew she was going to.
No, that tells me the employer came and said, here are your options. You can be fired or you can resign.
You decide.
Yes, you decide. One maybe comes with severance, the other doesn't.
Right.
So,
and also, when you're looking for another job, one looks a lot better on a resume.
Well, you pick your battles. She picked her battle. She probably sincerely thought that she was the voice of reason in all of this. That she wasn't taking a lot of stances which were against Charlie Kirk for whatever reason. She felt like she was just trying to maybe mend something, but that's not her role as an anchor person. That's just, stick to the news unless you're an editorialist. Right. And there are editorialists on television. And our show, Hello Houston, at the end says that we're responsible for what we say, and it doesn't necessarily reflect the opinions of management here.
And when we come and sit down, we are, at the end of the day, journalists. We're looking at information and we are discussing it from a perspective that we want to make sure our ultimate place on Hello Houston is where Houston talks. We're bringing perspectives. We invite other people into the conversation. But in a news cast,
you're looking for the facts.
You are just reporting straight fact.
As you know them. That's
we're moving the story forward. We're giving our local community the information.
And there are news directors who are deciding what stories are of value to this broadcast. And
reporters sit and pitch their ideas, and not everything that gets pitched goes into the news. And
you'd be surprised found not everything we pitch gets on this show.
You'd be shocked that the things
there's always an editorial process,
and you wonder what didn't make it.
What we should do is we should start having like a public forum where we get to pitch and people get to decide if they like it or not.
As we wrap right now, I want to mention that, of course, today is National Guacamole Day and National Play-Doh Day. And in some people, if you don't make your guacamole right, you may have made Play-Doh. I want to mention, and finishing up what we were just talking about, also in my tidbits for today, Season 4 of The Morning Show hits Apple TV Plus on Thursday. If you want to see kind of how things work in the background on a news show, a morning show, it's close.
I have a quick, the morning show, was with Jennifer Aniston and Reese Witherspoon. Yeah. That came out right peak 2020 of COVID, right? The first,
before.
Right. I mean, I started it when COVID, and I was a producer at Fox 26, and we moved home. And I remember I started it, and I was like, I can't watch this. This is just too
triggering.
Too triggering. It's like, and we're going to watch something else.
But I like the way it was sort of backcasted, how they dealt with something that we already knew had happened.
Yes.
And how they got to it.
Right, because it was based on...
it was based on the morning show. It started with the sex scandal.
That's
of
right.
Matt Lauer.
The Today Show.
Like Matt Lauer, the Today Show. That's right, inspired by.
So we already knew how we had gone through it, and now we got to watch how this morning show would go through the same thing. I thought that was part of the fun.
Talk about a fall from grace. Matt Lauer, man.
Yeah. Well, just to mention two things about the morning show, then we'll wrap this segment really quickly. If you ever want to know what a producer goes through to pull a show together, watch the pilot episode of the morning show. There's a producer who flies to the home of a guest to get them booked the next morning and brings them a gift basket. That's how much they go to, the level of trying to secure that guest you need. We don't fly anywhere to get our guests, but it's important.
We just zoom them in.
We just zoom them in. The other thing is Reese Witherspoon, just a revelation in that show because she's so different than what you think of when you think of Reese Witherspoon. And all of a sudden you're like, wait, that's the same actor. Anyway, season 4 is starting.
Coming up on Hello Houston, we will speak with John Sullivan, former U.S. ambassador to Russia and author of Midnight in Moscow, a memoir from the front lines of Russia's war against the West. This is News 88.7.
Hello, I'm Josh Adams, General Manager of Houston Public Media. This station just lost $2.2 million in federal support annually. To keep our station strong, we've launched the Resiliency Fund, powered by community members just like you. Your support will help bridge the funding gap and ensure these programs remain free and accessible to everyone. If public media and this station matter to you, now is the time to act. Support the Resiliency Fund today at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate.
I'm Jeremy Hobson. Next time on The Middle, education and how children learn has changed dramatically as technology has advanced. That's been a huge benefit in many ways, but it's also had some drawbacks, from screen addiction to the loss of important skills like writing with a pen and thinking for yourself. So what's being lost in education in the digital age? That's next time on The Middle.
You can hear The Middle. It's coming up Thursday night at 8 o'clock.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from listeners like you and from Baylor College of Medicine. Through research and innovation, Baylor continues to redefine what's possible in healthcare and medical discovery.
Support comes from the Welcome Group and Welcome Wilson Jr., President and CEO. With over 9 million square feet of manufacturing and industrial facilities in over 130 locations in Texas and the Southeast. More at welcomegroup.com.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from listeners like you and from Texas Mutual Insurance Company, a workers' compensation provider committed to helping Texas communities and emphasizing safety. More at texasmutual.com/TexansGetIt. Support comes from Texas Fine Craft Show, an indoor showcase of ceramics, wood, glass, jewelry, and more. September 26th through 28th at the Woodlands Waterway Marriott Hotel. Details and tickets at thewoodlandsartscouncil.org.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now here's Ernie Manous, Celestia Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
The tensions between the U.S. and Russia continue to shape global headlines. Few people understand the stakes better than John Sullivan, former U.S. ambassador to Russia. Sullivan served in Moscow during some of the most turbulent moments in recent U.S.-Russian relations, and he's now sharing that experience in a new memoir titled Midnight in Moscow, a memoir from the front lines of Russia's war against the West. To tell us more, welcome Ambassador John Sullivan to the show. And if you would like to join the conversation, you can call or text, maybe, 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@HelloHouston. Ambassador, welcome to the program.
Great. It's a pleasure to be with you.
So you were ambassador in what years?
I got confirmed by the Senate in late 2019, so I was appointed by President Trump, served for a year under Trump, and then 2 years under Biden. I left toward the end of 2022.
So about 3 years. You were living there in Russia?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
The pandemic and then the war. It was a tumultuous period.
Yeah.
So what made you decide to want to write this book?
Really, what I saw, particularly when in the run-up to the war and when the war started, and what the Russians, it's really about Russia. The end of my book, I get into more what the United States and the West should do in response. But it was really to let people know what I saw as an American there, what the Russians were doing to wrongfully detained Americans in Russia, how they started this aggressive war. We in the West, particularly in the United States, don't really understand the adversary we have in Moscow.
Well, it says that you were asleep. You got the call.
Yeah.
Russia is ready to invade Ukraine. And you call in the dogs, right? I mean, that must have been an absolutely frightening moment, but at the same time, you expected it.
Exactly. No, we knew it was coming. We'd known for months that they were going to do this. And I personally had been telling Americans in Moscow, get ready. Putin is going to do this. And a lot of people didn't believe me. They said it's irrational. He won't do it. He wants you to think he's going to do it because this is all about negotiating with the West. I said, no, he's going to invade. So when he actually invaded on February 24th, 2022, it wasn't a surprise, but it was early in the morning and had to rush back to the embassy to start dealing with this crisis, this war that had started.
Talk a little bit more about that area before we go back into more of the stuff. And I'm also curious about the title of the book. But the understanding, because I've mentioned this before on the show, my ex-sister-in-law is from Russia, and she's back there now, and she has a very different perspective on what's happening. And I'm curious, an understanding of Russia's view of why they did this invasion and how it differs from the story they share to the globe.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Russian people have a very different view on this conflict. Led by Putin, they view this as, Putin calls it a war that the United States, the West, started against Russia. He views this, it's sort of an outgrowth of the loss in the Cold War, which he has never gotten over. Remember the great geopolitical catastrophe? He described it of the 20th century, was the Soviet Union losing the Cold War, losing the Soviet Empire. This is all about getting back what was lost. And Ukraine was part of that Russian Empire going back centuries with the Tsars, the Soviet Union, and so forth. And Putin views Ukraine as Russia's, as his. That's what this is about.
But he sells a slightly different story to the Russian people. It's not just he wants back what he lost. He gives reason for why they need to go and liberate that area.
Because the West is taking it from us. The West fomented this illegal coup in Kyiv in 2014. And the West is taking what should be Russia, this greater Slavic entity, Kievan Rus, going back 1,000 years. The West is trying to take this back, take this from us. Part of this, what the Russians call, what Putin calls this relentless Eastern expansion of NATO. It's all part of it. It plays into that narrative. The way I look at it, I look at what NATO has done. NATO is, of course, a defensive alliance. What the Russian perspective completely discounts is the over 100 million people in Eastern Europe who lived under the yoke of either the Soviet Union as Soviet republics, the Baltic states, or in the Warsaw Pact. They know what it's like to be under the yoke of Moscow, and they looked west to NATO for protection from their neighbor to the east. Putin says, you took it from us. I say the Eastern Europeans looked for protection and a better future allied with Europe, with the EU, and with NATO.
Then, John, from your perspective, what are your thoughts on the relationship between President Trump and Putin?
Sure. Well, President Trump has come into office quite rightfully, I think, focused on trying to end this conflict. what I would say, and I've said to my former colleagues in government, is that they misperceive the adversary that they're negotiating with. Putin doesn't want to compromise. He doesn't. He wants victory. He doesn't want to end the war. He wants victory only on his terms. That's what he wants. That's what he'll take. President Trump has both rightfully focused on who doesn't want to stop the bloodshed, to see innocent people being killed, right? He also doesn't want to be, as the president put it, tapped along by Putin. But I'm afraid that's exactly what's happening. We're almost into October now, and the war continues. In fact, the pace of strikes on Ukraine, drones, missiles, and so forth have picked up.
But to go back when you were in Russia, and you're talking about their position of this is America, the West, coming in on them. What is your job? What do you do with that regime, with that government, to talk to them on behalf of us if they see you as the villain from the moment you walk in?
Yeah, well, it's a very difficult job, which is what made it attractive. In a sense, the challenge of it, doing it, representing in the United States in that hostile environment. But at the time, in fact, it was clear to me and to many Americans, particularly those of us serving in Moscow, how hostile the Russians were to the United States. Think about all the Americans who've been wrongfully detained. Brittany Griner, Evan Gershkovich. These are innocent people who were picked up, arrested by the Russians, put through a judicial system that's not worthy of the name. It's not really an independent judiciary. And why? Because the Russian government, Putin, may have reason to trade them. And what it was difficult for me as an American to wrap my mind around was when I got to Moscow and an American would be arrested, the media would start asking me not, is he or she innocent, what did he do, et cetera. It's, who are you going to trade for this American? Like, we don't think that way.
And so, John, when you were there and you're American and you are essentially there to build this relationship, what were some of those conversations like that you were having if you are in such a hostile type situation?
It was not that in theory we should have been building a relationship. It was trying to stop the descent of the spiral we were in, as I describe in my book. The relationship was just getting worse day by day, month by month, year by year. And from the Russian perspective, the reason what made it particularly difficult dealing with the Russians, particularly, I have to be careful, the Russian government, not the Russian people. I'm a Russophile. I love Russia. You've got Russian relatives. I wanted to I loved living in Moscow, right? It's the Russian government that I have a problem with. And here's the response of the Russian government. When I would go in from my very first days, my first meetings with senior government ministers, I would have my spiel about, look, we've got to stop digging the hole we're in. We're two great countries. We have these nuclear stockpiles. We've got to learn to live together. And where can we start? And my Russian interlocutor, no matter who it was, from Putin on down, would say, Mr. Ambassador, you're absolutely right. The state of U.S. Russia relations is absolutely terrible. And it's all your fault, so what are you going to do about it?
We have a few YouTube questions. One, do you have any idea why Trump seems to bend over backward for Putin?
Well, he has certainly been applying a huge amount of pressure to Ukraine and only threats to Putin, which he's not acted on. And over time, the problem is the more that we do that, the more we say you've got 10 days, 50 days, and then we're going to apply mass, and we don't. Putin already thought we didn't have the courage of our convictions, and every time something like that happens, it just ratchets up his confidence. I believe he's more confident today than he was a year ago in his position.
So to that end, what do you think the future of the conflict looks like? What can we expect in the coming months?
Well, think about this. This conflict will soon last longer than the United States' participation in World War II. We're approaching the 4th anniversary of this war. Think about this. The United States defeated the Empire of Japan and Nazi Germany with allies in less time than it's taken Putin to make incremental, really minor advances in territory in eastern Ukraine, in the Donbass. So I don't know that there is. Putin may be confident in his position, but he's confident because he thinks he has time on his hands.
We are speaking with John Sullivan, former U.S. ambassador to Russia and the author of Midnight in Moscow, a memoir from the front lines of Russia's war against the West. You can text us if you have questions, 713-440-8870, or email talk@hellohouston.org, or, of course, in our YouTube channel, you can leave questions. I started off by saying I wanted to ask you about the title of the book.
Yeah.
It's Midnight in Moscow. Does that imply there is a dawn, that there is a new day coming, or is this a dark meaning of it?
So you're looking at the dawn as a Western perspective, always looking for hope, right? Looking at it as dark is more of a Russian perspective. It's dark, and that title was both the darkness of the relationship, and it was shortly after midnight that I got the call when I was in my residence in Moscow. The ambassador's residence isn't on the compound, the embassy compound. I got the call from our defense attaché that the invasion had started, and I had to get back to the embassy. We had a code. I wrote about this in my book. We had a code because the ambassador's residence doesn't have secure communications, so we couldn't say things over an open line that we could in a more secure facility. So we had a code. They would call and say this code, and I'd get the bodyguards together and get in the limo and go to the embassy. And one of my colleagues had said, the code is turn on CNN. And I said, I said, no. If the Russians are going to listen to everything we say, the code's going to be get to the chopper. And you have to say it in an Arnold Schwarzenegger accent. And if they want to let them figure out what that means. If a Navy admiral from our embassy is calling me to say get in the chopper. So that was the call that came in just after midnight.
I'm curious. Let me jump in here. I'm just curious, the difference between serving under the Trump administration and serving under the Biden administration.
Yeah.
We hear lots of stories and the way it's characterized in our general media about what these administrations run like. From your point of view, what were the differences? What were the similarities in how they treated this negotiation or this relationship?
Well, from my perspective, and it's really more of a bureaucratic thing, less substance. The policies themselves. And this is, under the Trump in Trump 45, before the war started. Right. So I'm really talking about pre-war Trump, pre-war Biden. After the war starts, everything is different. But the difference between the Trump administration and the Biden administration was in the Trump administration, as ambassador, I dealt with the State Department. I dealt with Mike Pompeo. I had been Mike Pompeo's deputy. I had been the deputy secretary of state for 3 years before I went to Moscow. So I was instructed by the secretary of state. I rarely spoke to the White House. I never spoke to President Trump. I rarely spoke to the White House. That flipped in the Biden administration. My instructions from Washington, I came from the White House. I dealt with the White House, much less so with the State Department. That was from my perspective, and in style and how the administrations operated. That was the biggest change for me.
And so what did that actually mean, though? Then?
So it meant that I had a direct line to the Secretary of State because I'd been so close to him. So I could call him, with no notice and talk things over. When I, in the Biden administration, when the administration asked me to stay as ambassador, I went back into the sort of the lower down in the pecking order where ambassadors usually reside, reporting up through a bureaucracy. But for a country as important as Russia, with the interest that the Biden administration had in Russia, it meant I was dealing more with Jake Sullivan, John Feiner, the NSC staff, less so with the bureaucracy at the State Department.
Here's one. Does Putin have a file on Trump?
Putin's got a file on me. He's got a file on everybody. He's a KGB man. He's famously said he is a KGB man, and there's no such thing as a former KGB man.
That 1 hour they spent together that nobody knows what they said.
Yeah.
In Helsinki, remember?
Yeah.
What would be your guess?
Or how about in the limo?
That's what I'm more
right?
fascinated by.
You know, Putin's English isn't bad. He's fluent in German, but his English isn't bad. And he said, I think somebody said, one of the Russians said, I don't think it was Putin himself, Peskov, his spokesperson, I think said, he spoke to the president in English. He's not fluent, but he's good. It's good enough for him to. So they would have a conversation.
But we don't know about what.
John, now that you are stateside and you've been out of it and you can look back, it's always hindsight's 2020, right? What are some of the things that you think that you could have done differently when you were in that position as ambassador?
Boy, Putin is, for all his secretiveness and his background in the KGB, he tells us what he's going to do. He's been talking about Ukraine, for over 20 years. And in the lead from 2017, 18, 19, 20, 21, the United States, yes, we were focused on Ukraine. Ukraine was a problem, a bloody problem. The conflict was continuing, but it wasn't a priority. And it was only when it wasn't the highest priority for the United States in dealing with Russia. Think about this. Biden and Putin met in June of 2021 in Geneva, their only face-to-face meeting. What did they not talk about? Ukraine. Mm-hmm. The U.S. wasn't pushing it. And my opinion is Putin already knew what he was going to do at that point. He didn't need to
Crimea.
Right? Yeah. So we should have made more of an effort to be more directly involved in the We were deferring to the French and the Germans. Mm-hmm. We were going to try to support them. Angela Merkel, a German chancellor, was taking the lead, and of course she was replaced. But we didn't emphasize Ukraine as much as we should have.
Saying that, then, what do we know about his plans for Poland or Finland?
That's too soon to tell. He's clearly, he's got bigger ambitions beyond Ukraine, but Ukraine has been a much more difficult country for him to swallow than he thought. They thought that they were going to have a victory parade in Kyiv weeks after the special military operation began. Their senior officers who deployed into Ukraine were told to bring dress uniforms with them for victory parades.
Wow. Yes or no? Does Ukraine make it into NATO?
Not anytime soon. The question is, does Ukraine survive?
Right.
And the Ukrainians get a vote on that. And what they are the ones from Zelensky on down who have really surprised the Russians.
Which, John, I just want to ask you this real quick. You mentioned how basically the only end to this war would essentially be when Putin feels like there's been victory.
Right.
What does that mean for the Ukrainians?
So here's how Putin describes victory, and he's been consistent in saying this since the day that the invasion started. He wants to demilitarize Ukraine, and he wants to denazify Ukraine. Now, I will translate that for you. Denazify means removing a democratically elected government in Kyiv. Kyiv must be controlled by Moscow, from what the Russians call the center, and demilitarize what is probably the second most effective military now on the European continent. The Russian military, the Ukrainian military, more than any other NATO country's military. The Ukrainian military is now an extremely effective fighting force. Putin will only be satisfied if that military is shrunk from 1 million plus to a much smaller, 50, 100,000 constabulary force. So no military, no alignment with the West, alignment with Moscow, control by Moscow.
Will families get their children back?
I'm sorry?
Will families get their children back?
We're not doing enough to urge that, and at this point, I'm not optimistic.
You have to come back. There's so many more questions.
We have so many more questions, and we did receive some comments about people looking forward to reading your book.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
John Sullivan is the former U.S. ambassador to Russia. John, again, thank you for joining us on Hello Houston. Coming up, we'll discuss the Tony Award-winning play Kimberly Akimbo with the lead actress in the touring production. Stay with us as Hello Houston continues.
With federal funding cuts, Houston Public Media has lost $2.2 million annually. In response, we have launched the Resiliency Fund, an urgent initiative to protect the programs and services you rely on. That includes PBS Kids, that provides free educational programming to children and families across Greater Houston. Your support of the Resiliency Fund helps keep this vital service accessible to our community. Give now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate.
Author Angela Flournoy says the family we choose for ourselves is just as significant, sometimes even more so, than the one we're born into.
You tend to have these moments where you have to keep choosing. You have to keep choosing to be a part of this friendship.
I'm Elsa Chang. Flournoy discusses her new novel, The Wilderness, on All Things Considered from NPR News.
It's coming up this afternoon at 3 o'clock.
Support comes from Near Northwest Management District with new commercial construction, more than 350 acres of green space, parks, and sports complex. More information at nnmd.org. At the intersection of innovation.
Support comes from Terry Bryant Accident and Injury Law, sponsor of Hispanic Heritage Moments, committed to helping Houston injury victims get justice since 1985. Details at terrybryant.com.
Support comes from Asia Society Texas, presenting Hung Xian Between Worlds, an exhibition celebrating the artistic legacy of pioneering modern ink artist Hung Xian, closing September 21st. More at asiasociety.org/Texas. Support comes from Dekamera, presenting Other Worlds, Season Overture, works by Ravel, Rachmaninoff, and Schubert, featuring pianist Enon Barnatan and violinist Tessa Lark. October 3rd at the Wortham Center. Tickets at dekamera.com.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now back to Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
Kimberly Akimbo is a critically acclaimed Broadway musical based on David Lindsay Abair's play of the same name. The musical won 5 Tony Awards, including Best Musical, in 2023. It tells the story of a lonely teenage girl, Kimberly Lavaco, who suffers from a condition that causes her to rapidly age, giving her the appearance of an older woman. The national tour of Kimberly Akimbo runs through tonight into Sunday, September 21st at Hobby. Joining us now is Ann Morrison, who plays Kimberly in this direct from Broadway production. Hey, welcome to Hello Houston.
We can. Wait, I don't think we can hear you.
Check your mute.
Now can you hear
There
me?
you go. Yes, we can.
So, first of all, I looked at some of the previews, and this seems like a sort of a happy musical. I mean, it's sort of a tragic condition and situation, but maybe making the most of it.
I think this is an extremely funny show, very touching show, and very heartfelt. It could be considered a sad topic, but what's beautiful is Kimberly, who is approaching 16 in the show, but she is aging like 4 to 5 years each year. So by the time we see her, she looks like she's in the body of a 70-year-old. That would be me.
Oh. Me too.
I know, and but she's very positive. She's very optimistic about life. She has a very dysfunctional family, which is hilarious. Like, who doesn't in America? And probably could be facing a felony charge. I don't know. You'll have to come and see about that. And she has to awkwardly make friends with the other teenagers in the high school that she's in. But she remains optimistic, even with the possibility that, 16 could be the end of her life.
Yeah.
We don't know. So how does she navigate all that? And with the optimism that she has, I think it's a very life-affirming show. And I know that when the curtain goes down before we come out to have the bows, you can really feel the audience feeling really good about themselves. Yeah. And that's what we need right now.
Is this Werner syndrome, or do you actually identify?
It's a fictitious. I mean, it's kind of like my brain is. I haven't had enough coffee this morning. So, there is a disease where there are people who kids age very quickly and they don't live very long, but they don't look anything like me. So it's a little bit fictitious. But David and Janine, who wrote the show, really wanted to celebrate older actresses that don't get a chance to work much anymore. And when he wrote the play, he got that opportunity. And then, of course, it worked so beautifully as a musical. In fact, some people feel it's even better as a musical than it was as a play, although it was a very successful play. And it's, people say, are these songs that you go home humming? I hum them, but then I learned them.
You know, a lot of us like to reflect back or think about when we were younger. Few of us have the opportunity to re-inhabit, in your case, a 16-year-old night after night. What is that like getting to, how do you connect back to that time of your life? And is it a joyous journey for you?
Here's the weird thing. When the show first came on, I got emails and texts like crazy. Oh my God, Annie, somebody finally wrote a show for you. I saw the off-Broadway. It's changed a little bit for the Broadway, and thought, oh, hey, I could do that someday. But I have a career where I always go where I'm invited. I don't hunger for things. Because of that, I think doors just open and I get, hey, you want to come do the show? Okay. But people are saying you're perfect for it because you are older, but you have the mentality of a 16-year-old.
So this is no challenge for you. This is simple.
No. And I work with 16-year-olds. I have a theater company in Sarasota, Florida, where I originate right now, that celebrates solo theater artists. So we go into the performing arts high schools and we teach solo theater development. So I'm with 16 and 17-year-olds all the time. In fact, I may have a gesture in the show or a foot movement or something that is actually a tip to Maddie, a tip to Austin, you know, all these different people that I've been working with. But the interesting thing that nobody talks about is that Kimberly is in a body of a 70-year-old, right? Or around there. So that means her prefrontal cortex is in, which usually pops in around 25, with a group of kids who are 16. And that's an interesting layer to have to explore. Yeah. She really is the adult in the family.
So does it change your relationship then, now having played this role, with the young folks that you work with? Do you see them differently? Is there something that's helped you with a re-understanding of that generation?
I love all the generations. I think a company should have, well, of course, we're losing the great generation, our GI generation. We still have our silence, and of course, I am a baby boomer with a millennial son, and I'm working with Gen Zs, and now I'm starting to see this coming year, the students are coming in are the Gen Alphas, and they all have an interesting core belief, which was how they manifest in the world. But we also can work so beautifully together. This is a great company because my parents in the show are people in their 40s, and I'm the old broad, right? And the kids that are playing 16 are actually in their very early 20s. Right. But everyone, okay, I'm gonna start crying. Everyone, the crew, the creatives, everyone are full of heart. We giggle, we laugh, we enjoy each other. We enjoy talking. I love that the young people want to ask me about what it's like to have been, in a Broadway show in 1981.
That's what I want to ask you about. Not just you were in a Broadway show, you were in a Stephen Sondheim show directed by Hal Prince.
I know.
Merrily We Roll Along.
I mean, those are the musical theater gods that I grew up with, and to be able to work with them in the room. I mean, it's so funny. I love to see Merrily productions all over. People invite me, and if there's anyone who I played the female lead, Mary Flynn. Mm-hmm. And if I find someone's been a Mary Flynn, I always invite them to the Mary Flynn Club. But I just do, I'm the president. But it's so interesting to hear young people say, well, did you ever get to meet Stephen Sondheim? I went, duh. Yeah, I sat next to him at the piano when we figured out the keys. I mean, it was both. Hal was Uncle Hal, and Steve was a beautiful mentor who actually mentored my son in his musical. Mm. So that they're not here anymore. I wrote a solo musical about what it was like to be 25 in the 6 weeks of previews doing Merrily Roll Along, and I sing the score of the 1981 Merrily. So I know that very, very well. But so it's fun to have these Kimberly Akimbo kids who really want to know. You don't always get that with young people. They have attitude like they know everything. But these kids are really searching. They want to understand. They want to understand from the people that stood on the stage before them, and maybe influence the people that will stand on the stage after.
Well, we look forward to seeing you stand on the stage as Kimberly in this show right here in Houston. I'm going to be doing the live talk back with the audience after Thursday night's performance.
Excellent.
So
and you'll probably be talking to me.
I hope you'll come and join us for that talk back. Sometimes we get a dance captain. We get a dance captain and a third lead, but it'd be nice to have Kimberly up there with us.
Oh, I'm there. You can count me in. Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here. Good luck. Break a leg.
And Morrison is an actress currently playing Kimberly in the national tour of Kimberly Akimbo. And again, thanks for joining us on Hello Houston.
Hello.
Kimberly Akimbo runs at the Hobby Center through Sunday, September 21st. And that brings us to the end of our show. We want to thank you for listening to Hello Houston and joining us today. We will be back tomorrow with more conversations. We'll also be speaking with Renu Couture, the Chancellor and President of the University of Houston Systems. This is News 88.7. Have a great Tuesday.
Thanks for listening to Hello Houston. Join us every Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. to talk all things Houston. The Hello Houston production team includes Garrett Bowman, William Menjivar, Jen Altai, Todd Holslander, and Jim Kovacic. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at houstonpublicmedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Houston Center for Contemporary Craft, presenting Pigeon Crib Houston Edition, featuring genre